What's happening, everyone? Matt here on the Vinyl Head UK channel. And we've made it. We've got through to the, catch-up episode of the Download Festival Memory Series. We started all the way back in 2004, my first ever Download Festival at Donington. We've gone through the rain, the mud, the heat, a bazillion incredible bands. And we're going to catch up with the last, proper download. I know we've had Download Pilot a few months back, but the last proper download, the last download I was at, Download Festival 2019. It rained, we had sun, but most importantly, we had an incredible lineup across all of the stages. I was here, there, and everywhere that weekend. I really was. As per normal, it's coming from memory. This should be the one I remember most, right? Because it was the last one I was at. So technically, I should remember loads. Let's see how much I can remember. I've got my trusty list, just so we can see who played across the whole weekend. But you ready to dive in? I am. Let's look at headliners, where we always start. So, we had 3 headliners on main who had played before. 2 of which were becoming, Download Festival headline regulars. And 1 was back for the first time since, the dinosaurs, it felt. Friday night, the 14th of June, was Def Leppard coming back to headline again. I can't remember off the top of my head how many times at this point they've headlined. But here they were back again, headlining Friday night on main stage. Slipknot, on what I think was their maybe 4th time, headlining at Download, back once again on the Saturday. And then the Sunday, that band we hadn't seen, I say the dinosaurs, I think it was more 2006. Tool were back. Here's a spoiler for later on in the episode. The best headliner slot I have seen at Download was that slot. The last band I've seen at Donington. COVID came and took away 2 downloads. The last band I saw at Donington, Tool, happened to be the best set I have ever seen on those sacred grounds. More on that later, of course. So Def Leppard, Slipknot and Tool were our 3 main stage headliners. Let's look at the other stages, shall we? So I'm pretty sure once again we hadn't changed. No, we hadn't. We hadn't changed our names of the stages this year. We stuck with the same. So main stage, the Zippo Encore stage for 2nd, the Avalanche stage for 3rd, and the Dogtooth stage for 4th. So they remained the same names. Let's go across the board. Let's see who our headliners were on each stage across the weekend. So Friday, Def Leppard, we know. Back once again, kind of making this slot his own. 2nd stage headliner Friday was Rob Zombie for, I think, his 3rd time maybe now, headlining that 2nd stage. We saw him, of course, do a main stage sub. But yeah, that 2nd stage is his own somewhat. I always talk about bands like Korn and Deftones who always seem to play that sub-headliner slot on main. But yeah, Rob Zombie's kind of claiming that slot as his own, that 2nd stage headline slot. 3rd stage, Me First and the Gimme Gimmies. And then 4th stage, At the Gates. That's where I was. Saturday, we had Slipknot, as you know. Hailstorm working their way up into a headline slot. It was a good set, Hailstorm. I'm spoiling it all for you guys. I'm going to stop spoiling it. Simple Creatures on 3rd. I don't really know them. Maybe I do. I'm just not clued on. Can't think at the top of my head right now. And then 4th stage, was Carcass. Very cool. There are some really solid headliners for me personally on the 4th stage this weekend. Sunday, 16th, Tool, Slayer. 2nd stage headline. The last ever UK Slayer show. Pretty sad. Calling it a day not long after that. But the last ever UK show by Slayer was at Download, that 2nd stage headline slot on the Sunday night. 3rd stage, Enter Shikari, and then wrapping up 4th on the Sunday, Municipal Waste. So like I say, for me, At the Gates, Carcass, Municipal Waste, I'm down. That's pretty cool. And that was our headliners. So 12 of them. Of course, again, we didn't have a 5th stage this year. Maybe it'll come back, maybe it won't, who knows. Let's jump on in then. Friday the 14th of June. When I was looking through, so as I say, I try and remember as much as I can from my memory. But I do like to glance over the lineup quickly before I start this, just to, you know, kind of jog some memories out there. And I have to say, Friday must have been a record for the amount of bands that I saw. I was everywhere. Yeah, I travelled some ground that day. I saw a lot of bands. So let's dive on in. Let's waste no more time. Opening up main stage on the Friday. I'm going to let you into a secret. It wasn't a metalcore band. If you go back and view my past episodes, you'll know there's a trend. A lot of metalcore bands have opened up main stage on that first afternoon, that first day of Download. But I think for 2 years straight now, we didn't see a metalcore band. What's going on? Last in Line opened up main stage this year. Now, Last in Line is basically a band comprised of the touring band that Ronnie James Dio had. So through those classic albums, it was that band, bar Jimmy Bain, of course, who died. So obviously he was not involved, no longer with us, very sadly. But yeah, the past members of Dio's band, of course, Vivian Campbell was one of those, did double duty that day, of course, went on to play with Def Leppard that evening. But yeah, so they've released a couple of their own albums. So they played a bit of material from those. But we also got Rainbow in the Dark, I believe it was. So we did get a Dio tune. I can't remember who our vocalist was for them. But yeah, it wasn't a bad way to start. You know, get a bit of Dio. Yeah, cool. And it was cool that that band can still play together despite Dio not being with us anymore. So it was kind of a fun way to start. We had a bit of rain, but never mind. We don't mind too much. Following on from Last in Line, I have to say, this was kind of a few years back, they did kind of a classic rock day, which we've kind of a little bit seen since. Not an out-and-out classic rock day. I'm talking about the year, I'm going to go with maybe 2009, something like that, where we had Def Leppard and Whitesnake and Journey, ZZ Top, Blackstone Cherry. We kind of had a classic rock sound, and it was dubbed Classic Rock Day. This is kind of getting back into that. When you look through, it's kind of bands, some more modern bands, some classic bands like Whitesnake and Def Leppard themselves. But this was kind of that feel. No real metal as such on this stage that day. Following Last in Line were Tesla, a band I did watch, but don't really remember much about. Not really my thing. You know, we kind of stood back. I was with my very good friends Toby and Gina, who I've mentioned before, so hello to you two. Download regulars as well. So I like to go and hang out with those guys. They have a great taste in music. They've put me on to certain bands, Crowbot, for example. And yeah, we stood back a little bit and checked out Tesla, and it was okay. I don't remember huge amounts about those guys. Following Tesla was a band that we've seen before, and that was Blackberry Smoke. So we're carrying on that kind of classic rock feel with a more modern band, that southern rock feel that Blackberry Smoke have. Not really a big fan. I don't know much of their material. We kind of hung out. It was nice sort of ease into the weekend, especially with some of the bands that we would be seeing. It was a nice gentle way to break ourselves back into Donington and into Download. Decent crowd for, I have to say, for Blackberry Smoke. I remember watching back some footage on the highlight show they do and then on YouTube, and they had a really good crowd. And, you know, I guess that kind of figures considering it was a classic rock day as such. So probably a day that a lot of people into that type of music would really enjoy, a chance to experience newer bands while enjoying probably bands that you've been a fan of for a few decades maybe. After Blackberry Smoke was a band that I love. I've talked about on the channel a few times, especially talking about Download, and that is Clutch. How Clutch aren't bigger, I don't know. I think Clutch are an incredible band for just 4 guys who just look like, you know, just dads, you know, the dad rockers have just been pulled out from a crowd and given some instruments and told to go. They make great music. They make great albums. They have a stage presence. Neil Fallon, just fantastic stage presence, great voice. And here they were again. So they had just released, or they were on the Book of Bad Decisions album tour. So the set was heavy on tracks from that. We had In Walks Barbarella. We had Ghoul Wrangler, How to Shake Hands. I forget what else we had off that album. We also had thrown in, you know, The Regulator, Electric Worry, of course. And then they went into X-Ray Visions. Now, everyone kind of thought that they would wrap it up on Electric Worry like they usually do. But no, we got X-Ray Visions, which was a very cool way to end the set. It's a great song. And it was a really good set. Maybe not my favourite Clutch set that I've ever seen. They do mix it up a lot. You won't go and see Clutch 2 nights in a row and get the same set list. They do juggle it about. They have a very extensive back catalogue. So they can chop and change very easily. Each set list, obviously, you know, promoting the new album, it's going to be that album heavy. So maybe not my favourite set. I'd like more from Blast Tyrant, personally. It's my favourite album of theirs. But it's always a great time seeing Clutch. And I hope when they do these main stage shows, they are bringing in a new set of fans. People who maybe have not heard of them, or maybe know of them, but don't really know much of their stuff and interested to see them. I hope it expands that fan base, because I do think Clutch should be bigger. And it boggles my mind how they're not. So get on board with Clutch. Go and check them out. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Maybe if you're into, say, like black metal or death metal, you might be disappointed. But on the whole, I like to think you're not. There's a lot of guys actually into extreme metal that have a bit of a soft spot for Clutch. They do have mass appeal across hard rock and metal. So, yeah. I mean, they throw an old story out. Saw them open for Motorhead. So let's hope they got a blessing from all those Motorhead fans. Clutch. From Clutch, went and did my first visit to the second stage of the weekend, where I saw a band called Deadland Ritual. Maybe a band you haven't heard of, but I'm pretty sure you would have heard of at least one of their members. And that, of course, is Mr. Giza Butler of Black Sabbath on bass guitar. And on this occasion, I don't think the band's going anymore. And I think the band stopped when this member left, and that is Matt Sorum, who you may know from Guns N' Roses fame. After Steven Adler, we had Matt Sorum, and he's gone on to drum for many different bands. For Cult, of course, he was Velvet Revolver's drummer. So yes, Matt Sorum, Giza Butler, and it was fun. The vocalist was, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but I'd seen him before. He actually sung for Apocalyptica. I think he was Apocalyptica's sort of touring vocalist. Not that they really have much vocals in some of their material, but it was this guy singing, and he's got a great voice, really great voice. Nothing you haven't really heard before, but still a very solid voice. They did a lot of covers. So we got, they opened with Symptom of the Universe. We got War Pigs, I think, closing. We got some Sliver by Velvet Revolver. Rebel Yell by Billy Idol, amongst other things. A couple of their own tracks from their, I think they just did the one album in the end. As I say, I think that band's kind of dead and buried. It was a side project. Maybe not even a side project for someone like Giza. At that point, Sabbath had finished. So, you know, something fun for him to still play live and do that maybe isn't as serious as, you know, other stuff he's done, but still a chance to play live music. And it was good. It was good to have a sing-along. It was great to see Giza on, you know, essentially a smaller stage than what we were used to seeing him with Sabbath in recent years. Matt Sorum as well. It's great to see. And, you know, seeing him in front of you playing Symptom of the Universe, playing War Pigs. It's great. It's a great moment. I don't know if I'll ever get to see Giza Butler live again. Or Tony Iommi. You know, I think we maybe see Ozzy do his solo stuff still. Don't know how for much longer. But it was very cool. I think Giza Butler is one of the best bass players in our world of hard rock and metal. Incredible. His fingers are just the whole time. Amazing bass player. Following Deadland Ritual were a band that you probably do know, and that is Opeth. One of the tightest bands out there. I've mentioned them in that same breath as Meshuggah and Gajira. Bands that sound like you've took them straight off the album and stuck them onto that live stage, and you get almost identical sounds. They didn't have a long, well, they did have a long set, but with how long their songs are, they didn't play many, like 4 or 5 maybe. Open with Sorceress, and then they went into Ghost of Perdition. They closed with Deliverance. I mean, those 3 songs alone worth the day ticket price, I'd say. Sorceress, I love that song. That heavy riff at the start, that lovely passage through. That's a great track. And yeah, they're just so tight. Goes to Perdition, hearing that, what's that, like 10 minutes long? Sublime. And Mikael Akafat is brilliant, dry sense of humour. He'll make you laugh in amongst the death metal growls and the incredible progressive sort of almost jazzy fusion passages at times. Beautiful band, amazing, fantastic. I spoke a little bit about bands that, I think it was on the last episode maybe, bands that kind of mesmerize you. We were talking last week about Meshuggah and how the heaviness was almost mesmerizing. And you get that to a degree with Opeth. It's happened to me before, kind of just in that mesmerized trance of just noise and just takes you away. You know, Opeth have done that, and then Tool, who we'll talk about later, very much did that on their set on the Sunday. But just those guys and musicians are fantastic. And it was a great set. I really enjoy them. I like them being on second stage. I think they get a bit lost on main stage at Vast stage, but yeah, second stage or even third stage where I've seen them headline, perfect for them. Love it. Where do we go next? What do we do? Following that, back to Maine, and I saw maybe half of Slash, who was quite a few solo records into his career, I guess you could say. Now, he'd released, what, maybe 3, 4, 5, something like that, whichever one. So plenty of material to fill of his own in a set. I think there was only maybe one Guns N' Roses track from, well, definitely from what I saw. I believe he didn't even play Paradise City from what my friends told me, but I definitely saw Night Train. But yeah, plenty of material. He doesn't need necessarily to rely on the Guns tracks. The year before, of course, Guns N' Roses headlined and did that incredible 3-hour set. Go back and check out last week's video to see me just lush on out about that set and how pristine and perfect it was. But he doesn't need to fill them up with Guns N' Roses. He's got enough material to bulk out a set with his own. He wants to be promoting, you know, his own material. Yeah, on the first album, you're going to want to bulk out your set with Night Train or Sweet Child of Mine, Paradise City, Mr. Brownstone, whatever. But when you're, you know, maybe 4 or 5 albums deep, you want to be showcasing what you've worked on. You know, this is your baby if it's a solo project rather than a band project like with Guns N' Roses. And of course, Miles, one of the best current singers in the rock world. The pipes on that man, so good. I only saw half of it. As much as I like some of his solo stuff, you know, I admit I want to be hearing the Guns N' Roses tracks. I'm sure a lot of people do. We got treated to that the year before, of course, so I'm not gonna criticize too heavily. But I saw half of it because I wanted to go over to 4th stage for the first time that day and see a band who had exceptional hype around them. Still do. They have a new record who I believe will be coming out, which will be coming out this year. They've started dropping some tracks off it. They gained a lot of traction from these reaction videos that you see on YouTube for everything now. It started off with just people reacting to stuff. So people who might not necessarily be rock or metal fans are reacting to certain songs. Those videos grew into vocal coaches reacting. And now we just have to have just about everything. We have drum teachers reacting to drum videos. We have opera singers reacting to metal. We have everything, you name it. We have reaction videos. Classical composers, I've seen a lot of that sort of stuff. But yeah, one of those videos that really gained traction with these reaction videos, I think that got a lot of people onto this band, was Pisces, of course, by Ginger, all the way from the Ukraine. Not really a place you think of much when it comes to metal bands or known metal bands. But yeah, Ginger gained a lot of traction. I must admit, hands up, that's where I first heard this band, was Pisces being reacted to. It's one of those videos that really works, especially if you're not into rock or metal, because you get this very somber musical piece with Tatiana doing her lovely, clean vocals. She's a very, very accomplished singer. And then, of course, we go into this hugely heavy, almost kind of djenty feel with Tatiana suddenly going into these death growl vocals, and that's where the reaction lies. Now, Ginger gained good traction off Pisces and all of these YouTube videos, but away from Pisces, they are an incredible band. They are very technically accomplished musicians, the three of them. Tatiana incredible vocalist, how she switches from that brilliant singing voice to the death growls. You know, if you put it into the male sort of perspective, think of someone like Mikael Åkerfeldt, going back to him. Okay, maybe not as hot on his death growls as he once was, but think of that beautiful singing voice and then those hauntingly dark death vocals. That's what Tatiana does. And we are seeing more and more female vocalists in metal bands. We only really used to see, say, like Arch Enemy. Angela Gossow was very much spoke about because you didn't really see a female doing these guttural vocals. Now there's plenty. You know, there's so many female fronted bands doing the metal screams and the death vocals. But, you know, to see her switch from that beautiful singing voice to these so flawlessly, incredible. Like, big props to her. I think that's impressed even more people on these reaction videos. But they have such great material away from that. They'd recently dropped the macro, sorry. Was it macro or micro? I can't remember which one it was now. EP. So the hype had got out. It wasn't raining or anything. So I saw Gojira in the third stage a few years before. And the rain came, and I think it didn't matter if you liked Gojira or not. Everyone was trying to get into that tent. Everyone was trying to get into the tent for Ginger on the fourth stage, but that's because everybody wanted to see him. I was watching Slash, so I didn't get up too early. Who was on before? 12-Foot Ninja. Okay. I didn't get up too early, and that was my own fault, and I ended up being sort of on the verge of being able to get in. I managed to sort of scramble my way in a little bit, but I was still quite a far way back. Tatiana was wearing this sort of big gold one piece, so you could just about make out it was her in the gold, but you still obviously could hear everything, and they got such a huge crowd. And obviously when Pisces came, the crowd went bananas for it. But, you know, Teacher, Sit, Stay, Roll Over. What did they open with? Ape, I think it was they opened with. Yeah, the whole set was just greeted with a huge reaction. Obviously Pisces being the biggest. But yeah, they slayed away that set. They made it their own. They've been touring constantly. They've got a big US tour, I believe, coming out with Suicide Silence. They were due to play at Bloodstock this weekend just gone. They pulled out. Then they were back on it, and then they pulled out again, which is a shame for the guys at Bloodstock going to see, or the fans going to Bloodstock. A shame that they had to pull out. Hoping with the new album we get plenty of tour dates in the UK. But yeah, I love a bit of Ginger. What a band. And, you know, not just Tatiana, but the three guys. Amazing musicians. Great drummer, great guitarist, great bass player. Yeah, big things for Ginger. I hope we get them coming back to Donington again, definitely. After Ginger made a trek from 4th over to 2nd to catch our main stage second stage headliner. And that was Rob Zombie, as I said earlier, back once again doing that second stage headline slot. Big production from Rob, once again. That's the best way to see him. I've never confessed to being a fan of Rob Zombie or White Zombie, but I kind of enjoy seeing him. It's like a big party atmosphere. He's got a bundle of energy. He's got a good solid band, you know, practically half of Marilyn Manson's band that was. John Five, who I think is a very underrated guitarist. And it's big party tunes and everyone's having fun. Like I say, big production. I mentioned about when he was on that sub-headliner slot on main stage a few years ago. And it just didn't work in the daylight without really much of a production. I think that huge production for Rob Zombie with all the horror elements, because of course we all know he's a film director, especially with horror. So having those projections and the imagery that with the horror, you know, there was like old like Frankenstein stuff and old mummy stuff and Dracula stuff coming up. It was very cool, especially if you're into your horror. But yeah, just a whole big production and party atmosphere. It's good fun. I didn't watch much of him. I watched, it was kind of to fill a little bit of time before I went back to fourth stage, because he had a bit of a gap between Ginger and At the Gates, who were headlining. So went across to see Rob Zombie. And then, yeah, enjoyed it. Came back across to fourth to see At the Gates, who were playing, maybe this was their second time, I'm going to say. Potentially second time. They did a main stage slot fairly early on the Friday one year, which I don't think went down amazingly, because I don't think many people knew really who they were, which was a shame. That's the sort of problem I think you get on main stages. Not everybody's going to know everyone, because you get sort of fans of bands that will camp out, so some of the bands they may not know playing. I think that was the case for At the Gates on main, but I was glad to see them headlining fourth. I think it was a good stage for them to do, maybe even third. And yeah, it was a really long set, actually. It was a good 15, 16 tracks. Slaughter of a Soul, War with Reality, and Drink from the Night Itself were the albums that they played from. There was nothing pre-Slaughter to the Soul. Of course, they've dropped 2 albums since reforming. It's a band I've talked about before, a bit like Carcass, a band I never expected to ever see live. And here we are. I've seen At the Gates, wow, 5, 6 times maybe since reforming, which, as I say, I never thought I would. I remember that amazing afternoon, evening when I was in Germany at Wacken, and we had At the Gates followed by Carcass, or whichever way around it was. And to see those 2 bands in front of me who I never thought I would ever see, very cool. And of course, look at it now, 2019, and we've got At the Gates headlining that stage on the Friday, and Saturday being Carcass, which is very cool, especially for Download, who doesn't always go into more of the extreme side. As I say, stuff off those 3 albums. Slaughter of a Soul material, of course, as you would expect, got the biggest reaction. Slaughter of a Soul, Under a Serpent's Sun, Blinded by Fear, Nausea. That's a track, that is, Nausea. As is everything off Slaughter of a Soul. It's a very pivotal, important album. More important than I think some people realise. That was such a sort of turning point in the musical landscape. That melodic death sound that hugely inspired, again, not that maybe some fans of these bands realise, but a huge influence on the sort of American new wave of metal that came in, the American metalcore bands. They took huge influence from bands like At the Gates and records like Slaughter of a Soul. You listen to Killswitch, you can hear, you know, At the Gates all over it, Lamb of God, Trivium, those bands that all came in at the same sort of time. God, you can hear the influence, that melodic death sound and the influence from albums like Slaughter of a Soul. And that set was intense. That 4th stage went off in there. It was so intense. Pits just breaking out. Of course, you've got the bloody pillars all around. So you end up standing and only seeing half a stage. There was pits going around the pillars. It was just a sweat box in there, but it was so good. So good. And, you know, it's so great that to see younger fans as well. You know, Slaughter of a Soul came out in what, 94 or 5, something like that, was it? Can't remember the date off the top of my head, but, you know, to see younger fans there appreciating just how important this band is. They're not just a sort of band that did a little bit and would come back a few years later. They were pivotal band with that Swedish sound, the melodic death metal going on, and like I say, such an influence on so many other bands. It was so good to see him in there. It was a really great way to end the day. Didn't bother to go see any of Def Leppard. You know, didn't need to, seen them before, never really been a fan. It was a cool way to end the day without the Gates. I was happy with that. The only other band I haven't mentioned that played Maine, I like to obviously cover at least all of Maine, following Clutch and On Before Slash, was Whitesnake. Seen them once, that will do for me. Rest of the lineup across that day, as we always do. Second stage, we had Skid Row, Cavell Attack, who gained a huge amount of traction, being the direct support on Metallica's last tour. They did the UK dates, I believe, the European dates as well, maybe. We had Delane, Deadland Ritual, Opeth, who I mentioned. Eagles of Death Metal was sub-headlining, and then Rob Zombie over on second. Third stage, nothing really for me. We had bands like Zebrahead, Real Big Fish, and then Me First and the Gimme Gimme. So, you know, not really my scene. Fourth stage, pretty heavy day, to be honest. We had Conjurer playing. I think I kind of wish I'd gone to see them. There was a lot of buzz around the festival about those guys. I didn't end up going to see them because I think they were clashing with Clutch. So I didn't see them, but I heard a lot of people say very good things about Conjurer. Believe they did Bloodstock this past weekend as well. So definitely a band worth going to check out. I'd like to go see them real soon, definitely. 12th at Ninja Ginger. At the Gates headlining, of course. So yeah, pretty solid first day. Did a lot of walking from stage to stage that day. Jumping on to the Saturday, we started off on main stage with a band that for me personally is the closest we've got to that opening main stage set in 2005 by Trivium. Alien Weaponry. So, not the crowd that we had for Trivium back in 2005. I'm sure everybody has heard about that set. Trivium were originally booked to play a much lower slot. They ended up getting bumped up onto main, opening it. And for an 11 a.m. slot on a Saturday morning, they ended up pulling 40, 50,000 people maybe. And it went down as a very historic set. One that I was very happy to be a part of. Now, there was a lot of buzz surrounding Alien Weaponry. They didn't quite have those numbers, but they got a big crowd. And I mean, these guys, they're young now. At the time, they were like 17, 18, the three of them. Just kids, really. From New Zealand, they came on. The drummer did the haka, which I'm sure you've probably seen in the rugby with New Zealand and whatnot. There's a lot of traditional Maori elements to the band with vocals and song titles. And like I say, that haka going on from the drummer behind the kit when they came on. But they matched it all with music as well. And they got a big, decent crowd for an early slot. Like I say, there was a lot of buzz about this band. They have got a slot with Gojira on their UK tour, so employed to serve Alien Weaponry and Gojira. That's a hell of a triple bill, that is, which is great to see for those two bands with Gojira. But that set was solid. It was heavy. It was very bass heavy with the kick, and then the bass guitar itself is a little bit too heavy on the bass. You know, it's like the kick you could feel going through your throat and into your chest. So it kicked out a lot. But a really good set. There's a lot of hope for these young New Zealanders, the three of them. Like I say, they're kids at 17, 18. You know, now they're only going to be sort of 19, 20. And they're producing such great music at that age already. You know, it's upwards for these guys, and it was a really amazing way to start that main stage there. Following on from Alien Weaponry was a band So after Alien Weaponry, we had Royal Republic, who I didn't see, but I did see the next band, which was Power Trip, another band who had a lot of hype around them. Now, sadly, we have lost Riley, who's a vocalist. Very, very sad to lose him. You know, this was a band who had elements of thrash around them, elements of hardcore, but in a modern way. And Riley stomped around that stage with intent and purpose. He meant every lyric. He spat it out. The band was solid. The band were tight. A lot of hype about them. They lived up to it. They had, is it Executioner's Tax? Yeah, they had that pretty early onto the set, like second or third track. They meant business. And it was so sad to see the news not that long ago that we'd lost Riley, their vocalist. I hope that they can continue. I hope that they find someone with that same passion and intent and snarl that Riley had. Because I think this is a band that deserves to carry on with momentum. And, you know, that thrash up hardcore sound of theirs, continue with that. I think they could really do big things for that band. And they seem to be on that crest of doing big things. Even regardless of the pandemic, you know, if we still had Riley, I think Power Trip would definitely be a force to be reckoned with. You know, even a band sort of, you know, the next sort of Lamb of God, who can go on to headline festivals and have decent support slots for big metal bands, stuff like that. And I hope that they can continue that. This was the first and only time that I saw Power Trip live. I'd love to see him again, and I hope that they can find someone that does justice to what Riley had already started with that band. So really great set. Stayed on main after to catch a pretty amazing spectacle and a pretty amazing event. The biggest gig to date for this band, and that was Behemoth, however you want to say it. It's your preference. This was a huge crowd for this band. It seemed like most of Donington turned up for this set. They'd been on the rounds with Slipknot. So they were main support across Europe, maybe the States, definitely the UK, as main direct support for Slipknot off on their arena tour. So it's one of those bands where, you know, you've got Slipknot headlining, so that support mid-tour be fit onto the lineup somewhere else. We've seen it before. Rival Sons I've talked about with Black Sabbath, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, Behemoth, as I say, huge crowd. If you go and watch back footage of that set, the crowd is phenomenal. And Nurgle, you know, says this is the biggest gig we have done. Now, I've harped on about it. Luckily, this is the last week for now, until we get into 2022 next year. But for now, this is the last time you'll hear me harp on about this subject. You probably know what I'm going to say already if you've been following this series. Extreme metal being broadcast to the masses. It's not a bad thing on my book. Download traditionally, it does feature extreme metal. I can't argue that. We've had a few extreme metal bands. You know, this weekend we saw At the Gates, we saw Carcass and Behemoth. I'm sure probably if I scan through, maybe find another one at least. Plenty of bands in the past. Dying Fetus, okay, they kind of got there in a strange way. But extreme metal gracing the main stage there. But Behemoth, probably in the biggest slot for a main stage extreme metal act. Other than maybe Amon Amarth, but phenomenal set. Very big production, the pyro and the imagery, what they wear, you know, typical thing that we see within that type of music. I imagine some people might have seen it kind of panto. I think if you understand the band a little bit, you see maybe not that side, but I can imagine for a casual fan who, was there to check other bands out and stumbled across Behemoth, saw this huge crowd, wanted to see what was going on. I can imagine it coming across as a little bit panto. Nonetheless, an incredible set. Really, really solid set from those guys. Conquer All, of Fire and the Void, Blow Your Trumpets, Gabriel. They opened with Wolves of Siberia. Really amazing to get a band like Behemoth on the main stage, playing a good sort of slot, and having that crowd, that size crowd there to see it. That's not a bad thing, you know. We've seen other extreme metal bands we talked about earlier with At the Gates. They kind of got lost because it didn't seem like many people knew who they were. That's the impression I got. You know, Dying Fetus probably got a crowd because they'd seen this hashtag that was doing the rounds that got Dying Fetus into that opening slot on main stage. But to see that many people watching Behemoth was phenomenal. And I can understand why Nurgle was very proud to announce it was their biggest gig to date. Got to see him again a few months later when Slipknot rolled through town, the arena show, and see Behemoth opening up for Slipknot. I guess you could argue both bands are kind of pantomiming some of their visuals and whatnot, but I'd like to think Behemoth are the real deal. When you listen to what, you know, Nurgle's done in the past, for example, you'd like to think they're a bit of a real deal, but very cool to get them out into a bit more mainstream exposure. We don't want to make extreme metal too mainstream. I think a lot of us like that it's still kind of underground, but it was still very cool to get it out to that many people. After Behemoth, who I have to say as well, don't work in the blazing sun. I will just say that as well. Behemoth are best seen in the dark at night or inside. They did a headline slot on the third stage a few years back, and they had the pyro and stuff in there and the lights, and it's the spectacle works better with the music there. But in the middle of the day when the sun is shining, not as much, but you know, you can't blame weather. After Behemoth, we went from one extreme to the other. I made my way across to the second stage. It started to rain. Behemoth brought in those black clouds and it started to rain. But I went and saw a bit of country, because you all know by now I like a bit of country. I go from extreme metal to country. That's how I roll. You know, that's my jam. The Brothers Osborne were playing on second stage, and despite the rain, because it did get quite heavy, they got a decent crowd, and it just goes to show that country is breaking out and being more accessible, liked more by a bigger crowd. A few years ago, not that many years ago, country music, you'd say that and people would sort of scoff at you. Country, what? You know, some people still do. That's fine. It's fine in my book. Each to their own. More and more young people have got into country music. It's, as I say, become more accessible. There's more of a rock feel to some of the country stuff. There always kind of was, but a little bit more if you listen to Zach Brown, if you listen to Eric Church, the Brothers Osborne, Cadillac Free, bands like that, artists like that. You're getting a more rock approach, and I think that's drawing people in. And a lot of people are very proud to admit now that they are big country fans. I think before, a lot of people kept it quiet. If you like country, you didn't really tell people in case you got laughed at or they made fun of you that you like country. Because people would still associate country with, you know, like Dolly Parton and stuff like that. Whereas now people are very proud to be liking country, and a lot of younger people are getting into it. And it showed. You looked around at the crowd and there was a lot of younger people enjoying the Brothers Osborne, and they are good guys. They are fantastic guitarists. They are good vocalists. They have some catchy tunes. They have some nice jams. The band surround them is very good. It Ain't My Fault was a great sing-along. It's probably one of their, if not the most known track of theirs. Played some stuff off a new album. And it was a good set. Despite the rain, it was a good set. Lots of colourful ponchos are out and about. And it showed a diversity of download. We'll come on to a bit more diversity later this day, where we go from, you know, the extreme metal of Behemoth to country to electronic later on in the day. It's a very eclectic festival is Download now, which we've talked about before. But yeah, I had a lot of fun. The Brothers Osborne were fun. You know, we've seen in the past with the Cadillac Free playing several times, they can draw these country artists in. I've said before, I don't know if we'll ever get to the point where we might get someone like Zac Brown or Eric Church coming in. I don't think we're at that stage, but definitely bands that you could find on a rock lineup or supporting bands like ZZ Top or bands like that, Blackstone Cherry, even some, you know, Rival Sons maybe, Clutch. Those bands, we can find a place on that download lineup. I'd love to see Zac Brown there. I'd love to see Eric Church there. Chris Stapleton. I just don't think it will happen. Those guys don't really play the UK all that much outside of country to country festivals. So I don't think we'd quite see him maybe coming across and doing the European festivals. Who knows? Maybe one day. Might be surprised. Went back to main stage after the Brothers Osborne to catch a band very, very familiar with Download, very familiar to all of you guys, and that is Skindrid, a band that knows how to bring a party. I talked about Rob Zombie. This is another great example of a party band. Benji Webb, as I always say, here's the crowd, here's Benji Webb's hand, palm of the hand. That man knows how to work a crowd. And they've got the tunes to boot. You know, we had the Newport Helicopter, which you've all seen by now. All the usual classics that you hear from Skindrid. Pressure, Warning, Kill the Power. Another solid set by those guys. And they're popular. Benji Webb, as I say, he's funny. He can hold the crowd. He is very sort of eye-catching with what he wears. It's always worth seeing Skindrid. They brought on Gary Stringer as well, who you may not know that name, but he is the singer from Reef, who back in the 90s, early noughties, were a very big band in the UK scene. Put Your Hands Up. Do you remember that one? I like Reef. I don't mind a bit of Reef. I met Gary Stringer. I worked with Reef at a festival, and he's a really nice guy. And it was cool to see him up with Skindrid. Very cool. I enjoyed that. Where do we go? Let me check the lineup. Let me see. We stayed on main stage for Trivium. Back for what felt like the first time in a long time since they'd done main. They'd done second. But I think this may have been the first time back on main since 2012. I might be wrong on that, but I think that could be right. This was Trivium back at their best. Trivium seemed to have a shot in the arm of adrenaline, and they were back to great levels. I've spoke, you know, detailing through this download series the ups and downs of when I've seen Trivium. You know, Trivium, I think, lost their way a little bit on, like, the Crusade, for example. They were finding who they were. We went through that Metallica stage, that James Hetfield stage. They went through several drummers. But Trivium know who they are very much now. They've got a new album dropping soon. The tracks that are led off that we've heard so far are immense. Trivium are just unstoppable right now. This set, though, was Trivium at their very best. Pull Harder sound massive. Honestly, massive. In Wave sounding massive. I think they did Light to the Flies. It sounded massive. Matt Heafy was, the screams were good. He's come away a little bit from the screams. Corey does a lot of those now, but he was doing the screams and they sounded great. The band sounded tight, big crowd. This is Trivium at their best, and I'm glad they're at that point. I didn't want them to sort of have that huge momentum where we talked about earlier with the 05 set, have that huge momentum, and then just kind of fade away, what with the Crusade, and, you know, then just kind of just disappear into oblivion. I'm so glad that they kind of found themselves and they are where they're at. And this new album sounds like it's going to be massive. I'm really looking forward to hearing that. I'm looking forward to the tour that will follow. I'm looking forward to them coming back to Donington. Because if they're in the form they were for this set, you know, they really worked their way back up that bill. I mean, they were in a decent slot as it was, third down. I'd like to see them push up to sub-headliner. Don't think maybe ever a headline slot for Trivium, but definitely sub. And they are firing on all cylinders. And this was an amazing set. The sun was back out again after the rain had come and gone after Behemoth. I think Skindrid brought the sun back, definitely. But yeah, really great set. Really enjoyed that one. And it was so nice to see such energy coming from the band again. And I was glad to see them back on main. I was really looking forward to seeing them. They didn't disappoint. At this point, I went off to the second stage. Now, the band that were following Trivium, I spoke about a little bit with Diversity earlier. Let me get this right. I might pronounce it wrong. I wasn't overly familiar with these guys. So when they announced them to be sub-headline, I was like, what? What the hell? Have I missed something? I hope I get this right. Deantwoord? Correct me if I'm wrong on the comments. I don't know how you'll sort of make me realise I've said it wrong and how to pronounce it right. But I think it's Deantwoord. South African guys. Way different to anything really on that stage that day. I'm not... The crowd was huge. I saw a tiny little bit of them. Not much, just a little bit. And they had a big crowd. Not my thing at all. I really don't know much about these. As I say, when they got announced, I didn't know who they were. Maybe that's me being out of touch on other type of music a little bit, but I genuinely did not know. And I had to kind of go and check them out on YouTube and be like, whoa, is this something Slipknot have picked? Is this something just going a bit left field? Is this where we spoke other times where Andy Coppin and his team are trying to branch Download out a little bit more and diversify it further into more of a Reading type festival? They got a big crowd. I can't really comment on much more than that because I didn't see them. But obviously they went down pretty popular. Who would have thunk it? I went over onto second stage and I caught the last couple of songs of Stone Temple Pilots, who I've never really been into. Obviously very unlucky with vocalists. So they had Scott Weiland as their main vocalist for years and years, who's sadly no longer with us. Following him, we had Chester Bennington from Linkin Park. Again, sadly no longer with us. So not much luck on the vocal front there. But I caught the last couple of songs and I really enjoyed it. For the two songs that I saw of theirs, it was heavy. There's some nice riffs. I'm not massively familiar with their material. The vocalist looked a little bit like a bootleg Billy Idol. But he sounded, and he had the swagger of Scott Weiland. He sounded kind of just like Scott Weiland. And he had that swagger. You know, if you ever saw Scott Weiland, he was very thin, but he had that swagger, real, you know, you'll know what I mean if you've seen him, whether that's with Stone Temple or Velvet Revolver. And this guy had just that. It was like channeling a lot of Scott Weiland. I went and checked out after download who he was, and I think it turned out he was actually on the American X Factor, believe it or not. And the band obviously saw him and brought him into Stone Temple Pilots. But yeah, I really enjoyed the last couple of songs of theirs that I saw. It was quite heavy, heavier than I realised they were. It was good stuff. I don't know if I'd go and see them, a whole set of theirs, but if there was nobody else on and they came back to download, I think I'd definitely go consider watching the set and getting the whole feel for it. But the reason I went over was our second stage headliner that night, and that was Hailstorm, who had worked their way up. They'd done third stage, they'd done sort of second band on second stage, they'd done the main stage slots, back onto second. Here they were doing a headline slot, which I think is kind of deserved. They've been sort of plucking away a bit, Hailstorm, and it shows that the hard work's paid off for them. And I enjoyed their set. It was a good set. They played for just over an hour, so a lengthy set. They opened with Lizzie just doing just her and her vocal, which is enough to draw anybody in if you're just passing. And the first thing you hear is her just belting out without any other music or instruments. And you hear this amazing voice of hers. I think that's enough to kind of clasp you and suck you in and go, just purely out of interest, going, wow, this is an amazing vocalist. I want to hear more. So maybe that was her way of luring people in. There was a big crowd for them, nonetheless. When you're up against Deanne Wood, who might not have been everybody's cup of tea, you're probably going to draw people away to go and see other bands on at the same time. But yeah, these huge notes to open up before going into that opening track. We got I Am the Fire, I Miss the Misery. I think they closed with that. I Get Off, Love Bites, who they brought on the vocalist from the band, who I think are called Love Bites. I believe they're Japanese, maybe. Brought this little tiny female vocalist on, and they did Love Bites together, which the crowd really dug. Again, maybe Love Bites have flown under my radar a little bit, but she got a big reaction when Lizzie brought her on. We had the Silence, which obviously is an acoustic track anyway, but that real stripped down version of the Silence with just Lizzie and, is it Joe, maybe the guitarist? Might have got that wrong. And that was, for all the great tracks that Hailstorm have done, I mean, I love I Miss the Misery. I don't ever enjoy it as much live as I do on record. I think it sounds better on record than I've ever heard it live. But of all the tracks that I like of Hailstorm that they played, and the heavy riffs and Lizzie's voice, the Silence was one of the best parts of the set for me, because it just showed how absolutely sensational she is as a vocalist. It's why she gets plucked up by so many artists to come and do guest vocalists and so many guest slots on sets and albums. But this gave you goosebumps, this track. If you get a chance to go on YouTube and check out Hailstorm, I'm pretty sure it's on there. Go and listen to the Silence. If it's the only track you pick out from that set, make sure it's that one, because it was mind-blowing. It was beautiful. It was just staggering. What a voice. It was just so moving. I loved it. Really enjoyed that part of the set. We got the drum solo. I'm a drummer, as you know. I don't really like his drum solo, especially when he gets out the big sticks. It's so cheesy. Don't do it, my friend. We don't need to see you mucking about with big sticks. Just play a good... You're an amazing drummer. He really is a great drummer. Very vibrant to watch. He brings a show as he drums, which is an art in itself, I must add. But We don't need to see cheesy, stupid stuff like big sticks. It just draws away from the talent of the drum solo, and drum solos don't go down that popular with a lot of people anyway. I just hate those damn big sticks. Put them away. Just leave them at home. I don't care what you do. Don't bring them. Let's go to Maine and our headline slot, back for, I believe, was the 4th time Slipknot had come to absolutely level Donington, to put it bluntly. I've done something here. I've got a little note to the side of me here. I've never done this before, but I found the set online and I wrote the set list down to share it with you guys, because for me, this was the most perfect set list. If I had to write a set list for Slipknot, this would have been it. I could not have asked for a better set, and I don't think I will ever see as good a set list as this one right here. So like I say, I wrote it down. Let me introduce you to this set that night. People Equals Shit opened, into Sick, into Get This. I mean, man, those 3 tracks to start a set. That band it just means business. Unsainted, Disaster Piece, Before I Forget, The Heretic Anthem, Psychosocial, The Devil in I, Prosthetics, Vermilion, Custer, Sulfur, All Out Life, Duality, Spit It Out, and Surfacing. That was the set list. I could not have wrote a better set list for Slipknot that night. Honestly, as I say, People Equal Shit, into Sick, into Get This. What a 1, 2, 3 to open the set. Going into Unsainted, which for me is their strongest track on that latest album. It's massive. I love seeing them open with it when I saw that arena tour that I talked about with Behemoth. I loved them opening with Unsated, with that almost kind of choir at the start into the drum beat. Not a fill as such, but the drum beat. And then all hell just breaks loose. And then into Disaster Piece, which is probably one of my favourite Slipknot tracks anyway. I mean, wow. Just wow. I have the amazing memories of Custer as well. Just everyone just losing their mind around me during Custer. I got a video of it somewhere buried in my phone. Just panning around and just everyone just pumping their fists or banging their heads, spitting out those lyrics. And it was such a especially during the pandemic when all live music just got shut down, to go back and watch that video and see so many people just losing their mind to this song and the music, having the best time around each other, living in that moment was such an amazing thing to see. It really was. It was kind of sad in a way during the pandemic that we didn't have that at that very time. But wow, what a set. What a set. I love Slipknot. I love seeing them. They level places like no one else levels when the 9 of those guys come through. But I will never see Slipknot and see a better set list than that night, I don't think. I put my house on that, you know. Let's look at the rest of the lineup across the stages there. We've covered everyone on Maine. Obviously, Royal Republic and Diantwood I did not see. Second stage, Bad Wolves, who did, I think it was those guys that did that cover of Zombie, which was quite cool. Animals as Leaders. That's a band I would like to see live, but I've never got the chance to actually see so far. Epica, Brothers Osborne we talked about. 3 Days Grace, and then Stone Temple Pilots and Hailstorm. Third stage, again, nothing really on third stage that would have pulled me in. I don't think I actually saw anyone on third stage at all that weekend. It's very much of a theme on third stage now. But yeah, nothing really. I don't really even know who Simple Creatures are. And then on the fourth stage, so Love Bites, who I spoke about, there they were. The Who were playing. Now, not The Who, as in WHO, The Who, as in HU, the Mongolian band who do the metal in Mongolian throat singing, if that's what it's called. Correct me if I'm wrong, as always. Got a lot of hype about these guys right now. A lot of buzz because it's so unique. There's never been a band like it. So a lot of people are jumping on board with these guys. And I think they would have been pretty cool. I reckon they would have got a big crowd on that set. Because there already would have been a bit of a buzz about them. They're featured on this Black Album 30-year celebration that Metallica are putting out. What did they cover on it? Maybe Sad But True? Either way, they covered a Metallica track from the Black Album, and it sounded great. It was so different. Just this Mongolian throat vocals. It was so different and unique. And yeah, you're seeing their name crop up in a lot of places now. And then headline was Carcass. I didn't go see Carcass because obviously I was seeing Hailstorm and then Slipknot. But put them in that category of At the Gates. I spoke about them earlier. That night in Germany, getting to see At the Gates and Carcass was very magical. I've seen Carcass several times since. I hope I get to see Carcass many times following. Great band. Just a shame that they clashed with two bands that I wanted to go and see. But yeah, Carcass, very cool. And that was Saturday. We're going to jump on to Sunday. Didn't see as many bands on Sunday, if I'm honest. So, didn't actually see any bands up until midway through the day. So, main stage was Cane Hill, I Prevail, and Under Oath. They opened up. Didn't see any of those. I started my day on main seeing Godsmack, who I first saw Godsmack back in 2003, December 2003, and I remember that because they were opening for Metallica, the first ever time I saw Metallica, at Earl's Court down in London, which I hated that venue, like a massive horrible aircraft hangar. And there they were, opening up. And I've never seen Godsmack since. They don't play the UK very often. Barely at all. There's been a couple of times they've been booked on to download and have had to cancel or pulled out or whatever. I don't know. But here they were. They still do that double drum solo, and it was almost identical to the first time I saw it. So if you haven't seen it, YouTube it. The vocalist is a very established drummer, and they bring out a second full drum kit, and they basically have this drum off, which is choreographed. It's structured. It isn't just them jamming and whatever happens. It's very choreographed, and it's very cool because they interlink very closely and very well together. They end up going off and jamming a couple of tracks like Walk This Way and Enter Sandman and things like that. Bit of Rush they used to do. But it's very cool. Really put together well. It's, as I say, it's almost identical to when I saw it in 2003, so it hasn't progressed all that much, but it's still cool to see. My only sort of thing is, if you're playing a festival set, do you really want to include it? Do you not want to push out a couple more of your tracks? On the flip side, it's something to get people talking, and it's going to be something that you're going to remember the band. You know, even if the music didn't take you in, maybe that sort of unique double drum solo will pull you in instead, and get people talking. And I enjoy it being a drummer. I think it's fantastic. I love it. And it was cool to see it again, even if it did take up some valuable sort of song time, I guess, because it's not short either. It's quite long. But there were Godsmack back once again. Following Godsmack were Amon Amarth, back again being all Viking-esque. They had fairly big production again with the pyro and whatnot. They had Vikings coming on stage, so probably part of their crew dressed as Vikings coming on and sort of doing Viking-esque things, Viking shenanigans. The drum riser was a Viking longboat. There's a theme here. Guardians of Asgard, Raise Your Horns, Twilight of the Thunder God. The usual tracks you'd expect. Big crowd once again for Amon Amarth, which was good to see. I kind of lump Amon Amarth a little bit into that extreme music category. Maybe not so much these days. I think they've come a little bit more commercial in their sound. And the fact that you're seeing them playing these slots, not just once, you know, they've done this slot a couple, 2-3 times now. Big crowd, it's big sing-alongs, kind of anthemic on some of them, you know. Raise Your Horns, everyone's bouting that one out. Guardians of Asgard, people are bouting those songs out. But it's still cool to see, you know. I would still kind of lump them into that extreme metal sound. Not as extreme as, you know, Behemoth or other bands that we've spoke about. But it's cool to see, and it's cool that they get such a big following. And obviously in Europe, they're huge. I don't think the States have cottoned on quite as much onto Amon Amarth as UK and Europe has. You know, in Europe, they're headlining these sorts of festivals, doing big slots at Wacken and Graspop and Howlfest and whatever. But yeah, not as big a production, I think, as the last time they played, but still cool nonetheless. We still got the pyro and Johan Hegg being very Viking-y, if that's a word. After Amon Amarth were Lamb of God. Again, no stranger to Download. Played many times now. Done the DVD from the past slots. Got a lot of rave reviews. Big crowd. But for me, and I don't know why, I've never sort of put my finger on what it was. I've seen footage on YouTube of this gig and this slot. But something just was missing for me. And I don't know what. I really don't. Because Lamb of God were on fire. Big crowd. Good set list. But I don't know, just something fat, a little empty for me. They opened with a Murder, went into Ruin, we got Laid to Rest. Now You've Got Something to Die For, Walk With Me and How. Your huge pits as you expect from Lamb of God. Still no Black Label. Damn it, Lamb of God, I wish you would come back and play that song. I don't know why it got dropped. There's probably a reason somewhere. Redneck, which always invokes pits, multiple pits. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't know what it was. Just didn't feel that. I just felt something was missing compared to past Lamb of God sets, which was weird because a lot of people raved by them and really enjoyed them. I just think I've seen them sort of level gigs and Donington more in the past than maybe this one. Is a little bit going through the motions almost. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. After Lamb of God, we went across onto second stage again. And saw a band that I do very much like. I did, not that long ago, I might do a video of this, on Brainwave there, I might do a video of this, of albums that inspired me, sort of like a top 10 albums that inspired me, did a list, and one of those albums on there was Train of Thought by Dream Theater. Man, that's an album, what an album. I love drumming along to that. Mike Portnoy is very big influence on my drumming growing up. So I like a bit of Dream Theater. I like Dream Theater in their own setting, at their own gig. I don't really enjoy them at a festival. I think the music isn't designed for a short 40-minute set, 45-minute set, considering, you know, some of their songs are like half an hour. So I don't really like Dream Theater in a festival setting. But I went along. I wanted a good spot for Slayer, who were on after. So went along to see Dream Theater. Got a little bit bored, which I hate saying, especially by a band that I do like and are musically spectacular. You know, the four musicians of a band are, you know, massively educated in their field. Like, blow your mind musicianship from each one individually and then together as a unit. James LeBrie, hit and miss. He's not my favourite vocalist out there. I don't mind him, but there's plenty of other vocalists I'd rather listen to over him. That's probably the one element that's never pushed Dream Theater even further as one of my favourites. As I say, I love Train of Thought. I enjoyed Octavarium after that, but I love Train of Thought. But yeah, I just don't know. I just don't enjoy it in a festival setting so much with a shortened set. We did even get Pull Me Under. So, you know, they're essentially like their Enter Sandman. Or Ace of Spades or Paranoid or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm still a little bit bitter about Mike Mangini coming in and Portnoy going. But yeah, I just got a little bit bored, and I think a lot of people were there ready for Slayer, and Slayer and Dream Theater are very far apart in terms of their style, as you can imagine. And I think people were getting a little bit restless during Dream Theater. Of course, there was a lot of Dream Theater fans there. You know, I am one of them, but it was just not for me so much, that set. But then, of course, Slayer. Last ever UK show. Big crowd, and rightfully so. Now, I'm going to have to admit something to you guys. I'm not proud of this, but I got to admit it. If you follow this channel, you know that my favourite subgenre of metal is thrash. My favourite band, Metallica. Bands I adore and love very much. Testament, Anthrax, Slayer, Overkill. Bands like this. Talked about Municipal Waste on the channel before. Creator, Destruction. Even the you know, newer bands coming in, we've spoken about. This was monumental. The last ever time we would see Slayer play the UK. I'm going to say it. This was probably the worst clash that Download ever put on. I was not happy when they announced the set times. I was hoping they'd do what they sometimes do, like they did the previous night. Hailstorm finished. We had enough time to get over and get a good spot for Slipknot. No. They clashed. They overlapped Slayer and Tool. I had to make big decisions. The biggest decision I've probably had to make at Download. I know what you're going to say. After all I've said about thrash. I watched the first half of Slayer's set. And then with the utmost might and willpower, pulled myself away to go down to catch Tool. I love Tool and I love Slayer. I've seen Slayer many times. I've not seen Tool many times. Twice, I believe, I've seen Tool. 3 times now with this slot. It wasn't easy, but I had to do it because you never know when you're going to get to see Tool ever again. That point, this was the last time we were seeing Slayer. My logic was that I'd seen Slayer on that final UK arena tour with the full production as they brought to download this time. Massive production. And it was a great night. We had Obituary, Anthrax, Lamb of God, and Slayer. And Slayer played pretty much the same set list as we got here. And that for me was a great memory to see, you know, not the final time of seeing Slayer, but because I left early, the final times of hearing South of Heaven. The final time hearing Angel of Death, Raining Blood. Tracks like that. So got a good spot for Slayer. Not too near the front because I needed to get out, go down and see Tool. And they opened with Repentless as they had been all tour, which is a great way to kick off. I was lucky to see Post-Mortem, which I love. I was lucky to see War Ensemble with this huge amount of pyro. There was so much fire during War Ensemble. Could mount the Arctic from where we were stood. Disciple, which is still one of the few tracks I probably know word for word out of any band. And then I pulled myself away. I know what I was going to be missing. Even just that emotional goodbye when they finished those last notes of whatever they closed with. And just us saying goodbye and them saying goodbye to us. I knew I was going to be missing that. And that was hard. But I knew I needed to go see Tool. Slayer I've seen many times. I have very fond memories of seeing Slayer. I've seen Slayer a lot with my good friend Andy, who I mentioned about more in the early download videos. We have some great times seeing Slayer, some really fantastic moments, some really funny moments, some just intense getting into the music moments. I will always love Slayer. You don't just enjoy Slayer for a summer and move on. If you like Slayer, you're Slayer for life. And, you know, their music will live on. Buy more and more of their records. I've got plenty of them on CD, most of them on CD. Start transferring it to vinyl. Already have Repentless. One of the first vinyl I got was that album. Like the second one I think I got. Their music will always be there. I'm very glad to have been proud to say I saw Slayer many, many times. I've met Paul Bostaph, which was very cool. Met him when he was with Testament. I've met Kerry King a couple of times, who's probably the most intimidating man I have ever met in my life. He says it how it is, you know, he's very to the point, and he's just huge. He's not very tall, but he's huge. And he's a very intimidating man, but very nice. Talk to him. If you ever get to meet Kerry King, talk to him about 2 things. Snakes, because he's a big snake collector. Judas Priest. If you start that man, as I found out, if you start that man on Judas Priest, he will talk. He will talk. He hates Turbo. Don't most people? Really glad I got to see Slayer many times. Now, if I had walked away and I'd gone and seen Tool and Tool put on a very half-assed set, which I can't imagine they'd ever do, I would have been very disappointed. Thankfully, that set was the greatest set I'd ever seen at Download. No exaggeration. And I've seen some good sets. If you've been following this series, you will know when I talk about Slipknot, when I talk about Metallica, when I talk about Black Sabbath, AC/DC. 3 hours of Guns N' Roses, baby, Slash, Duff and Axl last week. Nothing compares to this Tool set. Really does not. I missed the very first track, which I think was Anema, which was a little shame, but come on, you know, Slayer, last ever UK slot. It's not the end of the world. So the first track I saw was The Pot, which I love. What a track. I love 10,000 Days. I love all Tool's album, but this set was just probably the closest I felt I've come to an out-of-body experience watching music or watching a band. I found myself just almost drifting to the music. This is going to sound really crazy and, you know, kind of weird, and you're probably going to think, man, what's he on? But honestly, halfway, 3/4 away through the set, I almost felt like I was the only person there, just floating to this music. No one else was around. It was just me and the band. I just felt like in my own world. I felt like my body was moving to the music, you know, just, I can't describe it. I really can't describe it. The Pot, what did we get? Parabola, Vicarious, 46 and 2, Jambi. We got a couple Descending, and I can't remember what else we got from the latest album. They closed with Stinkfist. It was a great set list. Again, if I could write a Tool set list, it would not far be off that one. I would love to have heard Writing 2 off 10,000 Fists. I love that track. I would have loved to have heard that one live. But a really great Tool set list. Maynard was usually, you know, in his usual spot at the back on a little riser next to the drum kit. He had his mohawk. He had his leather jacket. He had like some like black makeup, like kind of diamonds on his eyes from what I remember. He had his tartan trousers. He was doing all of his strange movements that he does, which I probably was doing by what I've just described, to be honest. He didn't really say much else because it's Maynard and he's a unique being. But man, it brings that smile to my face remembering it, just how amazing it was. Such an experience. You know, you go see Slayer or any of the bands I mentioned and you hear the tracks, it's like individual tracks, you're like, cool, they're playing this, like, oh, I'm going to enjoy this for whatever. But with Tool, it was just a continuous stream of just a wave of music. Even though they were playing all these different tracks, individual tracks, it was a wave of music that you just were carried on. I wish I could portray the feeling to each and every one of you watching this. I really wish I could do that. I don't know if I will ever see a set that will top it. Probably not, because of that movement and wave. It was just fantastic to be on and be a part of that, and it made it easier, made that decision easier to step away from Slayer, a band that I dearly love, on their last ever UK show. It made that feeling easier and better and easier to live with. As I say, if I got a half-ass Tool set, I would have kicked myself forever that I left Slayer for that. I'm so glad I got to leave a final ever UK show by a band that I love to go and see the best set I have probably ever seen at Download. Maybe ever in music, I don't know. I've seen a lot of sets. Thank you, Tool. That was phenomenal. Please come back. Let's not wait for a million years like before. Come back. We're calling you. Let's have a quick spin through what else we had. The only band really that weekend who I really wish I had seen that I did not see was Anthrax, who were on before Dream Theater on the second stage. They were clashing with Lamb of God. In hindsight, maybe I wish I'd gone to see Anthrax. Love both those bands, Lamb of God and Anthrax. But yeah, Lamb of God got it. Never mind. Just going back, I just noticed a band that I missed playing main stage, actually sub-headliners, so following Lamb of God and before Tool, was Smashing Pumpkins, which was quite a big deal having Smashing Pumpkins play Download. Obviously a very, very big band. Never had played Download before. Not my thing. Never been into Smashing Pumpkins at all. Couldn't even really name you many of their tracks. The production, from what I've seen since, looked quite big. There's some like big blow up, whatever they were. Billy Corgan was wearing something really weird. But yeah, never got into them. So it didn't really faze me at all that I didn't see them. But it's very cool for a lot of people to wait that long time and have them play at Download. Gone through second stage. Third stage, one band that sticks out that I probably would have liked to have gone and seen was Black Peaks, especially given the news that Black Peaks are no more. In the last couple of weeks, they put out that they have split. They've called it a day. I hope that they, down the line, if and when the time is right, they come back. A band that was doing really great things. I wish I'd seen them. Didn't get that chance. Kind of regret it a little bit now. Really great British band. I wish them the best. I hope one day they do come back though. They were on third. We had the Amity Affliction. We have Fever 3 for 3. Enter Shikari. So that would have been a pretty cool end to the day. Pretty manic, I imagine. Fourth stage. Whitechapel. And then into Municipal Waste. Destroying that stage, no doubt. Municipal Waste with multiple crowd surfers. But that wrapped up Download 2019. And for the time being, that wraps up our Download Festival Memory Series. This series will continue when we've got to 2022. So, Download, I will be there. And following over the days after that, I will do another video. Of course, that will be, you know, just less than a year away. So this series will continue, but you got to wait a little bit. But we have caught up. So we've gone from 2004 to 2019. Every Download covered that I've been to. As I said, I didn't do the first one, which is a shame. I didn't do the pilot, but I've done every other one. And I hope you enjoyed the ride. I've really enjoyed doing this. I'm looking forward to carrying it on with future Downloads. But I've enjoyed this big long trip down memory lane. And I hope it's brought back memories for all of you guys. I hope if you weren't at specific Downloads, you've enjoyed watching the videos and kind of reminiscing about lineups and hearing about who played and various things like that. I hope my memory has lived up to it all. By all means, as I always say, drop some comments. I know some of you have already. Drop some comments on your memories, if you were there, what you enjoyed, what you remember, what you didn't like. Let's have some fun with it. I'll join you on the next one in 2022 in the future. Plenty more content on the channel though. Vinyl appreciation videos and whatnot. Plenty of other music related videos coming out, content. I've got some gigs lined up I'll be going to. I'll be talking about some of those coming up. So yeah, lots of things still on the channel to take your fancy before we jump back into this series next year. Don't forget to subscribe. As always, let's build this channel up as best we can. Go and share it with your music loving friends. Hit the bell for all notifications. Smash that like button. I'm Matt. This is a Vinyl Head UK channel. Until next time, take care and I'll see you guys soon.